Today I thought I'd show you guys my 1915 South Bend Lathe catalog number 47. I'll try to concentrate on some of the unique things that I found in it. South Bend Lathe Works goes back to 1906 when the O'Brien twins formed South Bend Machine Tool Company. They actually changed the name in 1908 to South Bend Lathe Works. I also thought it was interesting to note that there is no phone numbers back then, and you had to contact them using their cable address twins. This is pretty common in a lot of the older manuals. Also, a lot of old manuals will use short cable address codes because back then when you sent a telegraph, you had to pay for every letter. On the first page of this catalog, you notice that they actually have a foot-powered South Bend lathe. I've actually never seen a picture of a foot-powered lathe for South Bend. Not sure exactly how many of those they made. This is the only catalog I have that shows it. The rest of the catalog primarily shows machines on one page and then with a description on the other. This here is a 12-inch South Bend lathe. This one just has a plain screw. They don't have a fancy automatic crossfeed on this one. Later, this is a 13-inch. This one does have the fancy automatic crossfeed option. Also notice that there is no gear covers. Those are actually extra, and they are shown later in the catalog. This here is a 15-inch South Bend. They didn't carry on the 15 inches for very long. Also, I was going to point out that the counter shaft was also included with the prices and with the standard tooling down below. This is the 18-inch South Bend. This is the largest South Bend covered in this catalog. It's another number 44. Pay close attention to this carriage system because on the next one I show you, there's going to be some changes. This is the South Bend gap bed lathe. This particular one is a 16 to 24 inch. Notice the piece of the bed that's down here, it's taken out. This is held in place by dowel pins, and this is all ground surface at the factory, so it can be placed back in for accuracy and used as a normal bed. One thing to note though is that the carriage is moved over. If you remember the last lathe I shows it in the center. They moved the carriage over actually, so when this the saddle and everything went over the bed, this gap here, there would be little deflection because you have so much more saddle and apron left. Another interesting thing are these raising blocks or risers. You could get these to accommodate an 18-inch lathe up to 24 inches. It only cost you 25 bucks. Now the ultimate, of course, would then be the gap bed lathe with riser blocks. So here you could get a 18-inch lathe with riser blocks, get you with a over the gap gives you 32 inches. Here's the milling attachment for the lathe. This particular one is a number 3. This would have been for a 12 or 13-inch South Bend lathe. They made 4 different numbers. However, for some reason they skipped number 2. I'm not quite sure the reasoning behind that. Now, if your factory was really fancy, you could actually get one of those fancy electric motors for your lathe instead of using the over belt drive system. This, of course, had the advantage of allowing you to place the lathe anywhere you wanted in the shop. This was actually shown in many advertisements as the marketing, because if you had, of course, the countershaft drive system above all your lathes, you were kind of limited on where they're located, especially if you upgrade or change lathes in the future. Some interesting things to note about this particular setup is it basically has the countershaft on the back of the lathe. And it actually, so you have both of your belts. One allows you to go in forward and the other one allows you to go in reverse. And you would use these shifter arms here to change direction and or to loosen it to change the speeds. This is actually would be operated the same way as an overdrive belt system, and this of course would allow any operator who is used to the overdrive system to easily operate this fancy new electric motor system without any trouble or new training. And here, of course, are the gear guards for the South Bend lathe. These were extra. These could cost up to as much as $5 a piece. And the rest of the catalog basically shows off things that you can make with a metal lathe and why you'd want to choose South Bend. This particular photograph, they're marketing how this can do heavy cuts. Here they're doing a 2.5-inch steel sleeve being reduced to 1 3/4 inches in diameter in one chip. And here they're showing other uses for lathes, how you can use it to face and use it just as a drill press. You know, just put your your steel or metal or whatever right up against your tailstock and drill away. Some other neat attachments that they show in here is the gear cutting attachment, which basically has an indexing plate. Also, they offered a deal for a tool holder to do like wood turning or really pattern making for castings. They also offered a turret, both for one to put on your carriage and then another that had a ram on it. And in the back, they basically just show some chucks. Here, they're showing a standard improved drill chuck. And then also they show some Skinner chucks as well. Well, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. If you're interested, please comment below and let me know, and I can do more of these of other books in my library.